digging into some of the top stories of the day, including the president's rather stunning briefing yesterday. Many people have described it as a clear shift in tone and messaging. So we want to dig in more to that. We're going to bring in Major Garrett to talk about that. Major, you know, for the first time, we heard the president say, listen, things are going to get worse before it gets better. The reason that, you know, people might wonder, well, we're just beating up on him because, you know, he's finally saying what his critics have wanted him to say, and we still sort of can't give him a break. But it's such a stunning turn in tone because this is a man that almost never wants to say anything negative, that he twists himself into verbal contortions in order to avoid at times saying negative things. Initially, early on in May, when he was tested for the coronavirus, it was very difficult for him to say that he tested negative. He said he tested positively in a negative way, and then eventually came around to saying what that really meant which was he tested negative. So this is why we're stunned by this. What do you make of this change in tone?
It is a reflection of the White House and specifically this president coming to terms with something that this president has not wanted to come to terms for weeks, which is the poll data is real, are real. The numbers are bad, and he is falling precipitously and is in a dangerous position right now where his prospects for re-election are not only dim, but decidedly dim. And his declining approval rating in the country on the pandemic is now a real and present threat to the Senate Republican majority. I'm told that there is polling data that the Republican and the Trump campaign believes to be credible and accurate, that he is down at least 6 points in North Carolina, 6, maybe 7 points in Georgia. Now, he won Georgia relatively comfortably in 2016, eked out a victory there in North Carolina in 2016. To be this far down, outside the margin of error in both states, is a very stark warning sign for this president. It's not as if he has been told, Mr. President, the polling data is bad for weeks. He has been, but he's been resistant to that. He's got a new campaign manager, Bill Stepien. He's not the wonder kid here. He's not doing something magical, but the new person in the Trump world always gets a good hearing, at least for a while. Everyone has, and then maybe some things change. So Bill Stepien has a hearing, being reinforced internally at the White House by Kellyanne Conway, I'm told. Lots of voices, and the president finally has taken them on board. And the biggest problem for this president, according to focus group data and polling data, is that in suburban areas where swing Republican voters reside, he has lost the confidence of those voters. They have begun to fundamentally tune him out. And without a candid assessment of where things are, that they're going to get worse, that this is a very serious, vicious virus, that youngsters shouldn't go to crowded bars. The president said that yesterday. Wear a mask all the way. I carry it with me. That's an embrace of the concept of a mask, completely out of touch or out of line with what he has previously said about mask wearing, and cooperating with governors. Not having it aside, oh, this governor is doing it badly, or I'm going to use the power of the federal government to punish school districts that are nervous about reopening. None of that rhetoric. It was very conciliatory. We're all in this together. A lot of teamwork, a lot of emphasis on that. All of those things are meant to reach out, at least rhetorically, to those swing voters whom the president has lost their willingness to listen to him, and try to get them back into the conversation, try to get them to listen to him again. Because the president has been told, if you don't do that, Mr. President, they're not coming back, and you cannot have what you believe you will have when the debates come around, a better than even chance of settling the scores and getting back in the race with Joe Biden. If you're so far back by then, the race isn't winnable. You've got to get this race much closer to have a chance for those debates to be as important and decisive as you believe they will be. That's part of what's going on.
Major, the question I have, Ed, is to the point that Ben Tracy made earlier to us with regards to style versus substance. The president has been known to read off a teleprompter or read off prepared notes words that he believes the American people want to hear. In this case, some of his critics are saying this is disingenuous for the very things you just listed, that his poll numbers are tanking against Joe Biden, and he is doing this as a political calculation as opposed to really caring about the lives of Americans whose lives would have been saved, frankly, if he had told his supporters and the country to wear masks 6 months ago. The other question, of course, becomes put to practice what you preach. The president brought the mask to the podium, he hasn't really been wearing it except for that one time where he tweeted that photo. Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan says if the president was serious about this, he would pass a mandate, a national mandate, making it a requirement to wear masks. And I guess the question I have, Major, is there a danger to his base? I started to see some things on social media, people who are supporters of President Trump saying, well, wait a second. For months, you told me that I didn't have to wear a mask, that you were trampling on my rights as an American to not have to wear a mask. Now you're telling me I should wear one? What's going on here? This doesn't make sense. Could he actually end up alienating some of his supporters by flip-flopping on something which is really vitally important and should have been done in the first place? I want to make that clear, but I'm just talking about the messaging here.
Well, he could very well run that risk, and I know he believes he does run that risk. But the risk is less than what he has been presented in the data, which is if you don't do anything, Mr. President, yes, you'll keep your base, but you won't be close. And you've got to get close to get back in this race. And so he's made a political calculation. He's done what a politician does. You change course, you change your rhetorical approach, you change your demeanor in order to be responsive to the thing that is the biggest proximate political threat to your reelection, which is what he is doing. But this is deeply confusing to the Trump base. And it runs completely counter to everything that not only the president has said, but the political messages he has sent to other like-minded Republicans, like the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, all of whom listened to the president's rhetoric in April and May and said, we are reopening and we are reopening rapidly. And they have now come to regret that decision, not only the decision, but the pace of reopening. And the president said nothing discouraging about that at all, and until very recently was skeptical. Hey, masks are a double-edged sword, you know, either good and bad. No, now he's emphatically saying, no, you should wear them. That is a stark, stark contrast, which sows confusion. It is now consistent with public health officials who have been saying it for weeks and months, and had it been said earlier, the circumstances in Florida, Texas, Arizona, other states would be different. But the president can do nothing about that now. He is trapped in the reality of the pandemic's resurgence, his rhetoric, which can be replayed and will be replayed over and over again, and the stark contrast he is now embracing. But guess what? He has decided, and his political advisors have persuaded him, you have no other choice. You have got to do this and reap the consequences and get on as best you can. Because staying where he was, skeptical, unduly positive, and angry that the virus was still hanging around in ways that he felt it shouldn't be, was a loser. A dead solid and perpetual and accelerating loser for this president. He had to change course. He has begun to do that. We will see how long it lasts.
It's such a great point that you raise, Major, you know, that the president may have changed his tone, at least as far as yesterday was concerned, but these governors have staked their political careers and the lives of their citizens on the rhetoric that the president was saying for months and months and months and months. And now if you're Governor Ron DeSantis and you're looking at the grim numbers that are coming out of your state, what do you do? I mean, what do you do? The president can change the tone from the podium, but if you're one of these governors, you're in big trouble, and so are the people that are in your state. It really is, it boggles the mind.
What you do is you change course and you begin to get responsive to the reality of the pandemic in your state, and now the president has essentially given you political cover, whatever that political cover may be worth, and it is definitely trading at a much lower value than it was trading at in April. And that's one of the things to keep in mind about if these briefings come back with any frequency. We're not in the same place that we were in March and April, where we were all trying to learn things and depended upon the administration for information. Lots of things have been learned now. The country has seen the consequences of a rushed reopening and rhetoric that propels that forward. It hasn't worked out well. And that fact pattern is now something the president cannot run away from. The fact pattern is real. There was a time early on when the president could have made a 50-50 or maybe 60-40 on the positive side, meaning in his direction, argument that, you know, China wasn't candid, it snuck up on us, not everyone was sure what this was, and we did the best we could in those fraught and difficult and very, very confusing early couple of months. He could have made and sustained a political argument on that and found people who would have been a fair mind say, you know what, he's probably got a fair point there. Now he owns the summer. The summer is his entirely. It is no one else's. It's not China's. It's not Europe's. It's not Brazil's. It is Donald Trump's. And this summer has become the central referendum on his reelection. He is dying to run against Joe Biden, but he can't. He's running against the pandemic. And yesterday was his first attempt to reset that clock, if he can, about changing his tone and approach to discussing the pandemic in hopes of resetting his own political clock and getting closer to a conversation and policy differences with the Biden campaign, if he can.
Major Garrett, you know, Emery and I are always so excited when you come on our air because we know it's going to be an exciting discussion with lots of interesting facts and analysis. And of course you've got the Takeout with Major Garrett, your podcast. I'm guessing you're bringing back the debrief, the debriefing the briefing, right? I mean, that's right. Part of this since the president is restarting his briefings apparently.
So Debriefing the Briefing was a podcast we created when the briefings were every day and they were running an hour and a half or 2 hours. And we wanted to give people a summary, journalistic summary, tight, focused on the facts of what happened and where things were going. We did that for the better part of 4 months. We have now dialed back and we have reimagined that concept. And we will have once a week podcast called The Debrief. It won't always be about the pandemic. Sometimes it will be, but it'll be about other issues that are very much in the news, very much in the front of everyone, but a much deeper dive, a much more immersive audio experience, we hope. So not just one podcast now, but 2.
Exciting, exciting. Okay, our producers are yelling at us that you got to go, Major. So we appreciate it. As always, Thank you very much. So great to have you.
Thanks.